Hello all and welcome to the GMAT Advanced Target 700 series by Career Karta. Today we are going to see the 15th installment of the verbal program. For those of you who are coming on to the 15th video directly, I would suggest you go back and have a quick view of the 14th installment of the series, because we are going to take forward our discussion from the 14th installment and come into the 15th one. We were discussing this passage, which is about political history, women's issues, and if you want to go through the entire discussion of the passage, you can go and have a detailed discussion. A quick recap: we were seeing three different approaches. We had the old historians before the 1960s and the 1970s, who were focusing on the leaders and the government. They were not paying a lot of attention to the common folk. Then you had the new political historians who came in, and they emerged in the 1960s and 70s, and they started focusing on ordinary citizens. Both of these guys, however, they excluded women in their analysis. The women were included by Paula Baker in her own analysis, who also went on to exclaim that women who were primarily focusing on specific issues through their societies were, even though they were not directly playing a role, they were indirectly shaping the political narrative that was to have a bearing on the political history of the 20th century, which was about to come, right? So women, they were more concerned about social issues rather than playing an active role in the politics. The technique that these new historians have been using is qualitative analysis of election returns. They were useless in analyzing people, the political history of people who did not vote, because only if you vote will you be included in the political return. And women did not vote at least till the 1920s, which means that anything that was done in the 19th century based on the election returns is definitely not going to include the women. If you want to discuss the, or have the discussion of the passage in greater detail, you can go back to the previous video. Let's quickly look at some of the additional questions that we have. The question 4 talks about, according to the passage, Paula Baker and the new political historians of the 1960s and the 1970s shared which of the following, right? A commitment to interest group politics. This is something that was kind of done by women. We cannot say that, both Paula Baker and the political historians of the 60s and 70s shared the commitment to this, so not enough information, right? Let's look at the next option. A disregard for political theory and ideology, too far-fetched. Again, we have no information regarding these. An interest in the ways in which 19th century politics prefigured contemporary politics. Now we know for a fact that 19th century politics, especially what the women did, it prefigured contemporary politics of the 20th century, given that the passage probably belongs to the time after 1960s and 70s. But this is not something on which Paula Baker and the new political historians shared any thoughts, because if you look at the new political historians, they did not even focus on women, right? Because they were so concerned with quantitative analysis of the political roles, which did not include women. So how could they have a view on what the women were doing? It was only Paula Baker who actually had a view of what women were doing, and they were basically looking at the societal politics that prefigured the contemporary politics. Hence, this goes out. A reliance on such quantitative techniques as the analysis of election returns. No, this is something that was being done by the new political historians, not necessarily by Paula Baker. It is not mentioned. This also goes out. An emphasis on the political involvement of ordinary citizens. Definitely easy option. What did the new guys do? New guys focused on the ordinary citizens. What did Paula Baker do? She also focused on ordinary citizens. What was the difference? She focused on, she included women. And these guys excluded women. Both of them focused on ordinary citizens. But Paula Baker was the one who included women, right? Hence, the one thing that they shared was a study of the manifestation of the involvement of ordinary citizens. right? Let's move on to the next question. It says that which of the following best describes the structure of the first paragraph of the passage. Okay, so the first paragraph of the passage is the new school of political history that emerged in the 1960s and 70s, got beyond the traditional focus of political historians or leaders and government institutions. So what is it doing? Even before you read the answer options, what is the first paragraph doing? The first paragraph is contrasting one approach, which was the old historians approach, with the new historians approach. What did the old guys do? Old guys focused on leaders. What did the new guys do? New guys focused on ordinary citizens. So even before I am reading the answer options, I am looking for an answer that says that contrast the old view with the new view, right? Let's look at the options. Two scholarly approaches are compared and the shortcoming common to both is identified. Perfect, bang on. This is exactly what my answer is. You know, if I was a slightly unprepared candidate, I would have just ran away with this answer. But as we have seen, GMAT has its way of kind of throwing bouncers. So we will look at all the other options. But as I said before, even before I read this, I was essentially looking for this kind of an answer. You know, that two scholarly approaches are being compared and contrasted. And the shortcoming common to both is identified. What is the shortcoming common to both? Both of them did not include women. Okay, but this is the shortcoming, that you did not have women in it. Let's look at option B. Two rival schools of thought are contrasted, and the third is alluded to. See, these are not rival schools. Okay, they are two scholarly approaches. You cannot say that the first historians were rivals of the other historians. There's not enough information to say that. An outmoded scholarly approach is described and a corrective approach is called for. See, again, nobody is saying that the previous approach is outmoded or the new approach is corrective. We are just saying these are two approaches. There's no information about the first one being outmoded. Okay, for all you know, that was the right approach. Okay, who are we to comment on that? An argument is outlined and counter arguments are mentioned. So this is certainly not happening. There's no argument that is being discussed. We are discussing approaches. Okay, the argument is coming much later. A historical era is described in terms of political trends. Partially covers what is being done, but definitely not the first paragraph structure. Okay, so we have a very good answer in option A. I hope you guys have been able to identify and appreciate that. Let's move on to the next question. The information in the passage suggests that pre-1916 political historian would have been most likely to undertake which of the following studies. Again, guys, even before we read this particular answer choices associated with this particular question, what would these guys be interested in? Okay, they were the people who were interested in leaders and government. So they would basically be trying to understand what are the leaders doing, what is the government doing, right? And forget about the ordinary people. Let's look at the option. An analysis of voting trends among women voters of the 1920s, certainly not. These guys, you know, even the newer historians did not think about women rights. So a pre-1960s guy who's basically an old school historian is definitely not going to think about the analysis of the voting trends of women. And it was not available also. Okay, till 1920 women did not vote, so this thing doesn't even exist. Option B, a study of male voters' gradual ideological shift from party politics to issue-oriented politics. So this is a very confusing option that they have given. Okay, would they be studying male voters? Yes. Ideological shift from party politics to issue-oriented politics. Issue-oriented politics is something that women discussed in 19th century and men plus women discussed in 20th century. Nobody is talking about women's shift from party politics to issue-oriented politics. Of course, they started thinking about that, an issue that women had been raising, but a 1960s political historian would not essentially be looking at this gradual shift of ideology, because they did not even believe what common people were doing. A biography of an influential 19th century Minister of Foreign Affairs. Yes, definitely. Why? Because the old historians were concerned about leaders and government. Focus on political historians on leaders and government. They only focused on the leaders. They studied their biographies, they studied how they came to power, they studied the government structure and everything. So they were not reading into what the masses believed or what the political, anything beyond the political class was not something which was their interest. Option D, an analysis of narratives written by previously unrecognized women activists. Again, no information. Easy question to knock off. There is no talk only of unrecognized women activists is a far-fetched thing. There is no talk of women activists only. A study of voting trends among naturalized immigrant laborers in 19th century logging camp. Now again, this is an option that has been given to confuse you. Okay, voting trends is something that the newer guys started looking at. Okay, the older guys were not interested in voting trends. I've been telling you this long time, after a long time. Okay, this is the analyzing the electoral returns is something that the newer guys did. A pre-1960s political historian has absolutely no connect with this particular style, right? So he is definitely not going to discuss whether immigrant, whether natives, doesn't matter, right? So option C becomes the answer. Okay, so I think we've been able to at least throw some light. I think one crucial lesson from this particular passage is that, for a lot of questions on the GMAT, once you've read the question, you've very well understood the passage beforehand, you must try and visualize in your mind what exactly should the ideal answer look like. Now, when you look at the options, of course, you might find the exact same choice, or you might find a choice which might very closely resemble that model answer that you had envisioned in your mind. But what it will do is that it will allow you to hone into the final answer much quicker. So for example, if let us say that exact answer that you were looking for is not available, it will be very easy for you to develop a cognition for the answer choice that is closest to what you had been thinking, right? It's a very good practice to, even before you read the answer options, visualize an answer in your mind. Okay, with that we come to the end of this session. Don't forget to subscribe so that you keep getting all videos of this particular series. Don't forget to like so that we are motivated to bring you more and more content around your GMAT preparation, right? Till then, all the best, keep preparing.